Morning, everybody. My name's Ewan Graham. I'm a partner at Hawkins Brown Architects, and it is my privilege to chair this panel discussion on behalf of British Land today. As you no doubt know, the theme of this year's forum is the concept of value, and what it is that we consider value in our industry as being. Our panel today has been brought together deliberately to widen the lens on what value really means. To consider value when applied to regeneration projects from a number of different perspectives, specifically using the Canada Water Regeneration Project as a case study. Regeneration brings with it opportunities for growth, for innovation and for scaling up. However, any regeneration project is more than just a series of lines or boxes on a drawing. They are constantly changing illustrations of what might be. It's also important to think about timing. Is it over a 5-year period, a 10-year period, a 20-year period, or beyond? Especially when we think about what the right thing to do is in terms of carbon, in terms of our building footprint, in terms of our brownfield sites. So, my hope for today's session is that we can talk about what defines, measures, and delivers value for London. I'd also like our fantastic panel to challenge some of those traditional opinions along the way. So before we start, we're going to play a very short video that outlines the Canada Water scheme so that everybody's on the same starting point, and then I'll introduce the panel and throw them a few questions to get started with. If we can start the video, please.
My journey to work, I cycle so near Greenland Dock. Some days I look at the sun on the water and I think, what an amazing place.
Canada Water has always been a pioneering neighbourhood, as Elizabethan market gardens to the proud history of the Docklands.
The name is quite special because it relates to the history of the area. The timber that would have come from Canada, from Russia.
And what we're trying to do next is just create the next chapter in this pioneering history of Canada Water.
London was really attracted to Canada Water because of the area itself. For our students, we believe that this combination of really being close to the centre of London, to this hub of activity, but with a local community feel.
We are currently in the paper garden, which is the creation of many hands of the community. Our vision in the future is to have pockets that are co-created with the community and looked after by the community, so people can create homes here and livelihoods here, and nature can be an integral part of that.
We're looking to create one of the most sustainable regeneration projects in the UK. We're going to do this by enhancing the existing nature of the site and increasing the biodiversity and ecological richness of the area, looking at innovative ways to reduce carbon, both in construction and in operation, and working with the existing community and looking at ways to enhance social connection, health and well-being.
I think it's brilliant to be here at the start.
Bringing a lot of life.
Creating spaces where exploring, being creative.
I think everyone that comes here, they discover it, they didn't know it before, and they want to stay.
Brilliant, thank you. If we could go to the next couple of slides, please. I think we've got just a headline of what we're going to talk about today, and if we go to the next one, we should have some pictures of our fine panel. There we go. So, I will start by introducing you all. Sandra Ferguson, immediately to my left here, is the CEO of Tree Shepherd. So, for those of you that don't know what Tree Shepherd is a charity based in Tulse Hill. They work across London, specifically at the Canada Water site, to help people in local communities establish their own enterprises and, in turn, give back to their local community by creating successful local businesses and, therefore, employment opportunities. That is really from individuals with an idea through to existing buildings who might be impacted by grand plans and visions of the future. Anna Andreou is CEO of Chemastry. Chemastry is a laboratory-based business standardising and automating how research and manufacturing are carried out in chemical laboratories. They work across boundaries of mechanical and electronic engineering, software developing, data analytics and chemistry. Chemastry currently occupies some space at British Land's Paper Yard building, a modular building that Hawkins Brown designed at Canada Water. Gavin Kamara, who is the MD of acquisitions at Contour. Contour helps scale-ups and unicorns, I don't know what a unicorn is, find the space they need in terms of works for them. So actively promoting expansion nationally and internationally. They strive to understand what makes their clients tick. Gavin acts as a tenant rep, and he says that an office needs to represent the company's culture. If you don't have a great office, people won't come. So there you go. And then finally on the end far left is Mike Wiseman, who is Head of Workspace, Leasing and Innovation for British Land. He takes an overview of the Regeneration project at Canada Water and has been instrumental in working alongside Hawkins Brown to create the Paper Yard. As I mentioned, a modular building, which is fundamentally about a meanwhile use. It's a 10-year building that forms part of the wider vision for Canada Water. So, without further delay, I'm going to dive straight in. And Sandra, I'm going to ask you to begin, please. What you do is very much about helping communities engage with these grand visions for regeneration. You're talking to a room full of property professionals. What would you say are the key drivers to creating lasting value for communities?
Okay, right. Thank you for that. And it's lovely to meet you all. And this is my first time doing this, so I'm just going to say that out there. Okay, so forgive me. Okay, so what are the key drivers? Okay, I mean, I think the people in the community are the key drivers. That's where the strength comes from, I think, to enable, a sustainable development. We need to understand what the challenges are in the community. We need to understand how those challenges will be addressed. We need to be able to enable that community to feel that they've got a vested interest in what's happening in the future. And the way that, needs to happen is that we need to talk to the communities, involve them, not necessarily telling them what you think the problems are, but listening and really responding to those problems and actually feeding back to the community when you decide to do something or not to do something. I mean, so it's really about the people. It's understanding the people, it's understanding what the issues are, understanding how you can collaborate with them, and that's the added value I think that can come.
And do you think that growth, as a general theme, bearing in mind what we're talking about here is kind of regeneration, do you think that the work you do with communities has a misinterpretation of what growth might be, or do you think that it's really about people who are too busy doing their day job to really engage with this level of thinking?
Right, so the people that we work with are startups, people at the beginning of their journey, or those businesses who have been impacted by regeneration and they may need to move. So growth for them it's really about them focusing on their business and their growth. I don't know that the startups would understand the growth for a development of this size. It's too big. It's 10 years from now. You're asking people to think about how they get involved in something that they can't actually see the end of. So for me, the growth is about how do we help those individuals to grow? How do we create an environment for those people to feel that they can take those steps necessary to be a part of something?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that definitely does. So Anna, I'm going to come to you. You're a small business. You're located at Canada Water, presumably with ambitions for growth. Why is it important for you to be in London? What value does London give to Chemastry?
So for early stage deep tech startups like mine, it's very important for us to be close to where the venture capital is, right? We are venture capital backed, so we want to be close to investors, and London is obviously a very common footpath for a lot of investors. Everyone I know who invests either has offices in London or travels through London at some point. But also I think you'll see that for multidiscipline companies like mine, it is very difficult to go to traditional talent hubs. Like, for example, a lot of science companies tend to be around, Oxford and the Cambridge arc, where, you have the talent hubs over there. But for my company, I need to also hire software developers, and there's more of them in London, for example. So it's important to also be in a location that serves the specific needs of the company.
And do you see yourself as a relatively fledgling business? Do you see yourself staying in Canada Water longer term? Do your space is in a meanwhile building with kind of 10 years worth of sort of consent in place? Do you see that being a journey where, as chemistry grows and innovates, you take bigger spaces, more diverse spaces? How do you see that in your kind of strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, everyone knows that affordability and location obviously are important, so I'll take that as a given. But for businesses like mine, scalability and flexibility of the space is also extremely important. So, for example, chemistry grew by 300% last year, and with deep tech startups, that kind of explosive growth is very, very common. So you don't want to get a lease for 5 or 10 years and already know when you're signing it that in a year or 2 years down the line, that space is not going to serve you anymore.
So the flexibility is the kind of critical piece.
Exactly.
So Gavin, this is playing right into your ballpark. So Gavin's business was set up, as I understand it, to basically target young and starting up businesses so that they, as a young and start-up business, could grow. Quite a sensible model. It works well. You kind of you look at what your tenants want in spaces. Anna's just eloquently talked about kind of flexibility and thinking not just one step ahead, but maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead. What do your main tenants, your future tenants, what are the exciting tenants that you represent looking for when they lease spaces in regeneration projects where perhaps the line's been drawn but the actual building hasn't really been finalised and decided yet?
Yeah, it's, it won't be a surprise for me to say that a lot of what Anna's just said resonates with the vast majority of our occupier clients. So what they're looking for is, I mean, one of the first things actually is speed. You know, how quickly can they get into the space? We all know how slow and painful real estate transactions can be. So they're growing with venture capital. That capital will land. There's then a business plan that needs to be put into place. So they need to put that into place quickly. So does the regeneration project facilitate that? Is there short-term flexible space that they can move into today with a plan to then grow into, you know, a longer-term lease commitment down the line? So for that we need scale. So it's speed, it's scalability. So how do they grow, or indeed how do they contract? And there's kind of 2 elements to this. I think there is the physical real estate element. Is there enough space for them to grow? And are they working with a collaborative asset owner? And I say asset owner rather than landlord deliberately, because what our occupiers are looking for is a collaborative relationship with the owner of the building. You know, not an archaic landlord who kind of hands over the space and, you know, see you later. The asset owner needs to facilitate that growth, I think. Some of the other elements that they're looking for as well is quality and amenity, particularly after, you know, COVID. It's not just a case that can we get a space, fit as many people on there as cheaply as possible. Now they want to find a space that fosters their culture, it promotes growth, it's quality. They need to bring people back into the office, and they need to retain those people. So the office really is becoming a battleground for talent in that respect. These are all kind of operational elements. I think there's also a lot more emphasis placed now on employees and actually what the employees expect from their office space. And I'm sure it's the same with you, Anna, but if I look at our employee base at Contour and our clients, the vast majority are Gen Y and Gen Z. So that's to say people who were born after 1980 and after 1984. And there are a few common traits that we're seeing. So these staff members they're tech savvy, they're tech native. So how does that development speak to technology? Anecdotally, I've got a US fintech client coming over at the moment, and they're sending their tech team not to look at the building we've shortlisted, but actually to understand how that building's technology can integrate and speak to their own tech. And the other point that is becoming increasingly important and increasingly being asked about, and again, it won't be a huge surprise, but it's around green credentials. So this workforce is carbon allergic. They want to know, is the building green? They're not necessarily focused on green credentials and acronyms. Like, they want to know, was it developed in as clean a manner as it can be? Could have been. How is the building powered? Is it powered by electricity? Is the water recycled within the scheme? And even things as simple as, can we open the windows? And kind of knitting this all together, the office space really does speak to their specific culture, and that goes to the building they're in, the land, the asset owner they're working with, and the estate generally.
And do you think, just kind of responding to that a little bit, you mentioned the kind of cultural difference between perhaps younger generations and the more traditional real estate model. Do you think that goes beyond the boundary of the tenant demise? And it's, so for example, at Canada Water, is it about, I'm landing in a place that's got some heritage, that's got a bit of history about it, that has a community, that engages with the work of local communities and business enterprise groups like Sandra works with? Is it about a mix of tenancies? I mean, you work with businesses that are at the very, very beginning of their journey, so they're innovators by nature, so they don't necessarily know what their journey is going to take. How does the community that they're building, for want of a description, lies within, how does that influence decisions?
I think it's becoming increasingly important, and again it comes back to that cultural piece. And these organisations want to take pride in their office space and the community that they're working from. But I think we also have to consider authenticity. It has to be real. It can't be staged. So if we're talking about Canada Water here, there's a thriving community there already. So how does the development encourage the collaboration of the businesses and the people who are there currently with the businesses that are coming in, and what is the environment that creates?
So it's a kind of theme of equity and value for all, rather than just value for someone who might be kind of developing a site. And I guess, Mike, you've listened to all of this as the man that kind of heads up Innovative Workspace at British Land, who are proposing these grand visions. What do you make of it? Or do you think that, we're at the London Real Estate Forum, do you think London is in good health? Do you think that schemes like Canada Water will really change the way that we think about regeneration, specifically thinking about timings and phasing?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm an optimistic person. I'm super bullish on London. I think those sort of long-term business trends that make this a great place to work, language, time zone, rule of law, all that stuff really relevant. And I think, the things then that Anna's talked about, like this is somewhere that people want to work. We get that repeatedly from talking to occupiers. I really felt it sort of post-Brexit referendum, and don't worry, I'm not opening that can of worms, but very quickly, we were talking to businesses, lots of doom and gloom in the press, but they were saying this is where we're going to be. So I think is all good. I think we're also incredibly well placed for what comes next. You think about where the growth is coming from globally, the sort of stuff that Anna and similar businesses are doing. We should be brilliant at that. There's great ideas here, great universities, great research institutions. Increasingly, there's money, which is important. And I'm seeing and hearing more of that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that we need to go and deliver that. Sandra, we were chatting about that before we came on. Mm-hmm. I'm still a little bit sceptical that we've got enough of it in the UK. I spend a lot of time in North America, and I know everybody doesn't love it, American dream thing. I think that sort of sense of ambition that comes with that is why they are so far ahead of us, and probably will continue to be so. I would love to see more of that, but it's good to see it coming through. And I think we need to create conditions for that sort of thing to thrive, and the real estate industry has a role to play in that. How we're doing, better than we were, but if you roll back, not very long ago, 5-10 years ago, businesses like ours, we just wanted long-term leases, big space takes, rock-solid covenants, which is fine, but that's not doing anything to support the growth of the businesses that you act for or that you are. And that probably limited us. We realised that as a business, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago, and probably at Broadgate first up the road. You've got this explosion of tech businesses to the north, and we weren't really engaging with that community properly. Like we moved from just about doing business with them to really embracing that part of the world, and it feels now like a no-brainer. Like, you know, we've got Monzo and others like who are, you know, big parts of our community. At the time, it was kind of like it was a big decision and a difficult one, but it's made it into so much a better place, and it makes commercial sense. You know, I think our model is pretty well set up for that. Like, we're long term. You've got to be long term to talk to your partnership piece, and also to, you know, the role we can play with sort of the community. But the campus model as well, it gives you that scalability that Anna's talked to. And I think, you know, coming on to the sort of the shameless plug for Canada Water, I hope this takes everything that we've done and takes it to another level. And, you know, I think it's going to be like the first big scheme like this in London that really like has been designed from the outset around like the community that's there. You know, if we'd done this 15 years ago, like most other developers, I expect we'd have been really focused on the businesses that are moving in, the people we're selling the flats to, and you'd have this kind of island of development. We've taken a very different approach. Like I can't claim to take any credit for that, but colleagues who have spent hours, months, years, I don't know, in the community, working with the local community to ensure that what we do is good for the area and not just good for British Land and our new customers. And I think we'll deliver on that. Like, the place has absolutely been designed around scaling up, like scale up businesses. So, you know, we can deliver 2.5 million square foot of workspace, and like the ethos of it is, this is where you come to grow. Like, that's what we're all about. That next generation, it's businesses like yours and so many others, as your clients can. You know, this is one place where you can do that with a single landlord. So I think we can deliver on all of that. But like, really exciting, the stuff that, you know, you talk to, Sandra. I think the sort of high growth people that you act for, it's interesting. We need to do more for that. But, you know, I like kind of like the entrepreneurialism in the community as well. And you know, it's great to be able to partner there and to be able to, like, we'd love to see the businesses that you're working with become a part of the master plan. They don't need to be the people who are going to take a whole building, but just, you know, an integral part of that community to help people take some ownership. So, yeah, I think we're in a good place. There's lots more that we can do. I'm incredibly optimistic that we're going to do it at Canada Water.
So it kind of takes two scales. Like, we've got the opposite ends of the table here. We've got the big vision for the long term. We're in this for the long term. We're invested. We're going to make sure that there's space. And then, Sandra, you've got a series of small enterprises that are very fleet of foot. They need to be able to juggle pressures of cost of living. They need to juggle pressures at home. They need to juggle pressures of new rules and regulations that impact them as they grow. Thrive is this partnership that's set up on the Canada Water site. This is the run and managed with Tree Shepherd. It's effectively like a kind of business community hub that also provides kind of advice via Tree Shepherd. It's moved a couple of times already. Do you think that it moving and being temporary is a benefit? Do you think that as the vision for Canada Water develops, the idea that the community gets to see the pockets moving forward is a positive thing?
Yes, definitely. I mean, we were in, when Thrive first started, there was an old restaurant in the middle of the development. It was empty, you know, there was crime around it. It was, the community, you know, thought it was a bit of an eyesore. We approached British Land and we asked whether or not we could have the space. I remember organising a paint party with local residents who came in, you know, to sort of make it into the workspace that we've got. And we invited, you know, the local community to come forward, and we did training to support them to be able to start their own businesses. I mean, the fact that it was a temporary space was really useful because our clients don't need to worry about, you know, any long-term commitments around buildings. They can just come in, practice what we teach them. We've also got opportunities to host markets as well within Canada Water, which gives those clients a chance to, you know, again, you know, see what they can do in their particular business. So yeah, I think having Thrive, which is thriving, we have 21 businesses in there. We've moved to a new space because they're going to demolish Thrive. So we're actually in the shopping centre now with a lovely sign that says Thrive. We've got more footfall and we've got more attention. And the clients in there are feeling more as if they've been taken seriously. They really are starting to commit to, looking at their business plans and thinking about finance and thinking about marketing and all the things that you need to do to help your business to grow. Whereas before, I think, people felt it was more like a hobby, a community thing. So, yes, I think, moving around helps. Meanwhile, space helps. And, we definitely need to do more of that to get the local community to feel that they're a part of this in terms of, having a business that's their aspiration, is to have a business space within Canada Water in 10 years' time.
And I guess it's interesting that you're now in the shopping centre.
Yeah.
I mean, it's challenging that whole the high street's dying kind of question.
Yeah.
Canada Water's a very specific part of London. The sort of Surrey Quays shopping centre is an island of its own in a sea of car parking.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, do you see the big visions for the future of any regeneration project, let alone Canada Water? Do you think that retail needs to have a place? Do you think it moves around? Do you think it shifts? Do you think that business uses, startups, small spaces need to be more agile? Do you think that innovation that you're looking after in terms of businesses coming forward don't necessarily fit the old categories of what space types have?
Yeah, look, there's a few questions there, aren't there? Do I think that retail is an important part of it? Yeah, absolutely critical. Like, if you think about what makes a really good place, it's like great public spaces and good shops, restaurants, cafes, leisure, culture, all that sort of stuff. That's what makes the place. So, yes, it's critical. Like, we've got to create environments that people want to go to, and that's what we're trying to do at Canada Water to shift. It's already a popular retail destination. We want to make it sort of relevant today and hopefully, filled with some of the businesses that come out of Thrive. That will be the plan. Do I think people need to be flexible? Well, not necessarily. I think we need to have a degree of flexibility. I think it's helpful for businesses like Sandra's that can move around because that means that they can grow with us as we develop. We couldn't ask the same thing of Anna's business because you couldn't possibly sort of take everything down and setting up the next day. Don't worry, there's no chance of that, just to be clear.
Thank you.
And so I think you've got to understand the different needs of different businesses, and that's what we try and do. So when we built the paper yard, that was to respond to a very clear problem we saw across London, which was great tailwinds for the sort of life science and innovation sector in London. Lots of plans, including from people like us, to build big shiny new buildings, probably not delivered until, let's be realistic, 28, 29, 30. So where are that next generation of small businesses going to grow? So we were like, how do we do this? How do we solve this problem quickly? Building modular, well, as well as we do. That was the way to do it. We were able to respond to that and help incubate these businesses, support them through their growth, and then move them into permanent buildings.
So Anna, you're a tenant. You work in the modular building that's there for 10 years.
The first one in.
Yeah, first one in. Do you feel privileged to be there, or is it a need, or how does Camastri feel about being kind of trailblazers? Is that a good thing, or do you see it as being a chain that you need to hold on to?
No, this is absolutely a good thing. I mean, maybe it's because we are a startup, so we are all about pioneering. So, we understand what it is like to make a change and to take a new space and be the first one to do something. But that type of development has been so needed for us, and I mean, I've talked to Mike about this. We've been struggling for a long time previously to find space that was suitable for us, because not only, unfortunately, in my opinion, there isn't enough laboratory space in the UK, but also a lot of laboratory space doesn't necessarily serve everybody's needs. For example, for a deep tech startup like mine, our office to lab ratio, for example, is not necessarily the same as another company's. Or, for example, we wanted to build our own laboratory because we wanted to tailor the specification of it around automation. So we wanted to have the flexibility to do that. So I feel incredibly privileged. I feel almost a little bit emotional because I saw the paper yard development before there was even a building there. So it's very close to my heart.
Brilliant. And moving forward, if you could give British Land 2 pence on what you think should come next, what would you say is needed by companies like yours in terms of that longer term thinking, rather than, okay, I've grown 300% in a year? What do you need? And I'm going to tee Gavin up for the same sort of question because he's dealing with similar businesses.
I would still like to see more buildings. As you've mentioned, this is sadly temporary, I hope not, building. So we definitely need more developments like that. But also in terms of keeping tenants like me in, developments like this, the society and sort of the tenants that come into that space are incredibly important. For example, to give you something that might sound really small to you, but it's big for businesses like ours, having other chemistry or biology or deep tech companies in the same space means we could share equipment, and equipment for life sciences is a 6-7 figure, which small businesses like me can't necessarily afford. So having that community where businesses can work with each other, collaborate with each other, and thrive, and even form maybe scientific and technical as well as business relationships, that's what would keep the tenants in the long term. So the building of that community and the sort of collaborations between similar businesses.
Gavin, do you think that your startup businesses across all of these vast kind of array of sectors, do you think they scout out that ecosystem as much as what the inside of the building's like and what the performance is and the flexibility in lease agreements?
I wouldn't necessarily say scout out. What I would say is that if they're in a building or an estate that has that environment, then they don't want to leave. So I think it's a big point for retention. The working environment outside of their specific office is so important, and they want to be with like-minded businesses, like-minded people. They want to be able to engage with one another and also engage with the community, and there's a real opportunity to do that here from a kind of, there is a CSR kind of tick box perspective, but actually, and kind of going back to one of my earlier comments, this sort of stuff's really important for the employees, and that they want to be able to get involved with their micro-location.
Okay, that's good. I'm going to change the tact a little bit. So, Mike, I was asked to talk about the affordable workspace and the retail kind of aspect of Canada Water. So the Section 106 and the agreements with Southwark, and basically making sure that it's adding value. I mean, coming back to the theme of the discussion, how do we ensure that genuine opportunities to add value are created in schemes of this scale, bearing in mind that we've got bits of it that start quite quickly, and then we've got bits that aren't coming forward till 2030, 2035, and so on and so forth. How does British Land keep track on what the need is and what the real market value comes forward as?
Well, look, we embrace this, and I know it's the whole idea of affordable workspace. It's still relatively new in London terms, and I know certainly probably in certain circumstances it's seen tax on development something people have got to deal with. That's not the approach we take. I think we've got the advantage, like where we own campuses, collections of buildings, we're trying to build communities, and the fact that we see like startup, small business community is a really important part of that mix, which is like value accretive to everything we're trying to do. So we embrace it, and how do we ensure that it remains relevant? Well, it's through dialogue, like with the community, and that's it's just the way this has to be. Someone in my business gave a great stat that I think we've got more people doing sort of community-focused work in our business than we do doing investment. We do a lot of like capital activity, but it shows how seriously we take it. We don't just see ourselves as developers who are coming in to build out buildings, as I say, sell the flats, rent the office space, and move on. We see ourselves as like custodians of pieces of city, and we see ourselves as working in partnership with that community and being able to respond to it. So it's the conversations we have with people like Sandra. That's led to sort of the market and being able to sort of support some of those small independent retailers to launch their products. At the other end of the scale, responding to like community feedback is what we're doing with the print works and sort of the retention of that cultural venue as part of our master plan.
Yeah, so I was going to just touch on the term master plan. So there was an interesting article in the BD, I think it was a week ago. David Rudlin said that the term master plan implies an urban areas are working towards a fixed state, rather than being about perpetual flux, right? To the panel, generally, how do you all feel about having master plans described to each other? Do we think that we should call them something else? Illustrations, visions, strategic plans? Because actually we need to push forward in some direction, and we need to make sure everybody's going in the same direction, ideally. but we also need to make space for those conversations. We need to make space for that dialogue, and actually some of that cultural framework perhaps is what's been lost traditionally when large businesses turn up and say, we've got a plan. I mean, I guess maybe Sandra, I might come to you first on that.
Okay. Master plan. Okay. No, I don't like that. It doesn't resonate. It sends, signals to the communities that we work with. Will not necessarily embrace that terminology. Now, I wouldn't know. What else you could use? Illustrations. I don't know some of the suggestions, but I think the word master plan. I mean, I was playing around. I was thinking mistress plan, but yeah, I don't know about that.
Has a different connotation, doesn't it?
Yeah, mistress plan, lady plan. But yeah, if it's about power and and control and having that say over a community, we need to challenge that, because we need to embrace communities, listen to them. There needs to be a partnership in there, collaboration, to make these things work, and for people to not feel that they are being excluded from the process. There was something I was listening to yesterday. I was at a meeting, and I learned that there are 10,000 new residents coming into the Canada Water development. That's the estimated number, which is really great. Now, there's a piece of research that we've done from other town centres in Southwark where there's data that says the reason 64% of people who started their business started it because they wanted to serve a community. They didn't say it was because I had this amazing product, or it's because they wanted to serve a community. Now there's a little bit of a challenge, I suppose, there with 10,000 new people coming in. We've got the current community there. How do we blend that? How do we help those businesses to maybe take advantage of the fact that those new people are coming in? Some of the businesses that we work with, definitely, all around Southwark, kind of ones that we do, they don't have the time to do the market research around what's needed or how to add value. They're so busy trying to focus on surviving, they're going to miss this opportunity. So there's something there that the master plan could do to help address that problem. Yeah.
Anna, do you feel part of the community already? You've only been there 6 months, something like that?
Almost.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that 10,000 new people, do you see them as new people, or are you one of the new people? How does that fit with you?
We're probably part of the building now, but this is incredibly exciting to even think about. I mean, we were the first tenants in, and there was no one in at the time, and just seeing the vision also come in life and how this could become now a community. I'm already thinking and looking forward of what kind of company will be next door to me, and how can we collaborate, how can we share skill and knowledge. It's incredibly exciting, and I want to be part of it. I want to be part of it long time. That's why we need this kind of developments.
Cool. Mike, how do you see the role of a master plan, whether it's that or something other named?
Well, it's interesting. I've not heard that challenge before. There's some of my colleagues sitting here. There's probably someone in my community team who's going to tell me off afterwards for using the term. So apologies if that's the case. I absolutely get what you're saying. We are genuinely sort of coming into this with really good intentions, and this idea that what we deliver is delivered not just for the sort of the new businesses that are coming, but it's this really integrated piece of city. And that's really hard, isn't it? Because we're coming and building 5-6 million square foot in the middle of this already thriving community. This has not worked in lots of places. There's bound to be some them and us, and we've got to manage that, and we can't possibly keep everybody happy. We're talking to 30,000 residents pretty regularly. I think we'll get there. I think we're going to create the opportunities we need, and it's a really good challenge. The 10,000 new people coming in. Well, what do we do? How do we work with you to create opportunities, create access to that? Because success here has to be about more than just, I know I've said this a few times, than the people who move in. It's got to be about the area. It's why we don't like the term regeneration, because we're not regenerating this area. It's a thriving local community. it's got a 1980s shopping centre and a car park in the middle of it, and like we can improve that. We can create an amazing new district for London. But the new district is not just what we're doing now; it's all of it. So that's absolutely what I think we will achieve.
Brilliant. Right, everybody. I'm told that you can ask questions. You can send them through to this. There is one so far. I'll let you kind of spend your time and send some questions, and we can also do hands up and ask people in the good old-fashioned way. But I do have one question here about what social impact measurement metrics are British Land using to measure the benefit for occupiers' communities? I'm assuming that's going to be here at Canada Water, but I mean it could be more broadly than that. And I don't know whether or not you know the answer to that, Mike.
I'm looking for some help. Can you give me the question again? I might not be able
What
to answer
social impact measurement / metrics are British Land using to measure the benefits for occupiers and communities?
Genuinely, are there any of my colleagues who'd like to help me answer that question?
Sure.
Thanks, Alex.
Employment.
You might like to talk about Canada Water Connect, which is a really good measurement. Do you want me to talk about
Yeah, that'd be great.
Do you want to come and stand in the mic so the room can hear?
Sorry, Alex.
Saves your voice.
starting to regret this now?
Apologies for dragging you in.
Yeah, I mean, measurement of social impact, I think everybody knows is challenging, but there are certain initiatives that we're undertaking at Canada Water that are already having significant impact, and I think Canada Water Connect is a really good example. We're working with East London Business Alliance, who we've known for years at Broadgate, to set up Canada Water Connect, which is an opportunity for local businesses to scout for local talent and local workforce, to feed into the businesses that are coming to the area, that are already in the area, and as part of the whole construction effort as well. So I think we're hitting our 100-person people in employment in October, and we have an agreement with Southwark Council where we have significant penalties if we don't hit milestone targets, and that's a big impetus for us to get it right. Canada Water Connect's a fantastic opportunity. People work in our offices, and they talk to people locally every single day, getting them into jobs. So I think it's a good example.
I think it's a good example, and look, it is absolutely the core of what we do. There are obviously a pretty ambitious skills and education program as part of our planning requirements. But thanks,
Exit stage late.
We genuinely are going further than that, and so I think it's a difference between measurement and what we're actually trying to do. But we want the businesses that move here to be a part of that as well. How we measure that remains to be seen, but that's the idea. We are looking for businesses that will be part of that process as well.
Good. So, it ultimately comes back to that whole piece about flexibility, doesn't it? Which leads nicely on to my next question. So, this is aimed at you, Mike. It says for Mike. So, what has been the biggest change you might have made to the vision for the master plan since it was first conceived, and how did you adapt / overcome that? I guess from our perspective, we've been involved in the work at Printworks, which started off as Workspace and has had a huge change following kind of the public consultation about a very successful meanwhile use as a nightclub. And Paper Yard itself as an opportunistic development in a short term has been really impressive as well. But I guess over to you in terms of the bigger picture.
Yeah, I think I was about to use the word master plan again. I'm sorry, I've stopped using it.
Vision. Let's use vision.
Our planning consent was intentionally really flexible, and when you're building something like this and you're doing it over 10 years, hopefully, stuff's going to change, and so we've got flexibility around uses, but also within those uses. And actually, if you look, we started working up a planning or sort of designing 10 years ago. Businesses like yours, Anna, were not on our radar 10 years ago. We've obviously been through sort of that change. We've been through COVID. The world has changed pretty significantly. Having a planning consent that was flexible enough for us to be able to adapt it and start to deliver laboratory space, I think is probably the biggest change that we'll make. And so both in permanent buildings, but then being able to respond with temporary buildings which can meet that near-term demand and then seed the location, hopefully as a hub for those sorts of businesses.
And do you think the mix of uses has varied dramatically, or is it broadly the same principles?
It hasn't yet, but again, when we talk about the flexible consent, we've got, hopefully people have seen the model outside and it shows you some buildings and how it all works. We know it won't ultimately look like that, but we know roughly what the mix of uses will be. It will remain mixed use, that's absolutely critical. Whether it's 2.5 million square foot of workspace and 800,000 or 1.2 million square foot of retail, that stuff remains to be seen. But so far, not a huge change, apart from the one you've mentioned, and the sort of the change within the former Printworks building.
Yeah. Brilliant. I haven't got any more questions on the digital things. Does anybody in the room have a question they want to ask? They're too scared of the technology, maybe? Do they? No? Okay, well, what I'll do is I will start with a little bit of closing remarks, because I think what we've tried to do today is pull together, as you might have understood how we sort of set up the panel, from the very, very individual human perspective through to a much more corporate perspective on how value is provided in regeneration, although we don't like the word regeneration either, so we're rapidly creating a glossary of terms that should be forbidden. But the reality of this is, I think it comes back to something very salient, which is whatever we do as designers, as placemakers, as community leadership and council and businesses and tenant representatives, ultimately it's all about people. We know that. Everybody in this room knows that. Without the people, there is no project. It doesn't happen. It can't happen. We know that we have to be flexible. We know we have to think about surrounding areas, and we need to think about residents and businesses and the kind of uses of how the pressures of working in London, kind of especially, come forward. And I think from our perspective as designers and as part of this panel, it's really asking you all to go away and really consider how you make impact in the projects you're working on for people. Mike's talked fairly eloquently about how British Land take it seriously. They're there to do good. They are there for a long time. They're there to be a partner. Gavin talks about growing up with businesses. So this is about securing relationships and making sure that his clients grow so that his business can grow. It's that sort of we're better together. Anna's talked about being a small business in a startup space that hopes that their neighbours will be just as ambitious and just as successful and promote even new innovative work modes in between those two businesses, which, who knows, might even be competitors. There's the interesting kind of connotation. And Sandra has spoken about how businesses, no matter how small, need to engage with these visions for the future, which without really sort of that grassroots level discussions, people like myself and Mike don't necessarily get that feedback loop. So I think from our perspective, we wanted to leave you with the thought that it's important to kind of start with the general, then dive into the specific, and then maybe just step back again and think about that general once you've secured that consent, that particular lease, that particular year-long agreement to be in a space. I think that is where value comes in. It's not about the pounds per square foot. It's not about the number of new residents. It's not about the successful leasing over a period of time. It's about, can this place sustain itself over a period of time? I am going to dip back into this. I've had two more. One of the questions here, historically, as areas of London have been regenerated, existing occupiers and residents have been displaced. How will Canada Water be different? I guess that's probably a you, Mike.
Well, Sandra's talked a lot about what we're doing with local business. If you look at what we're developing, we're not really. We're taking down the shopping centre, and there's some existing like retail warehouse units. The operators from the shopping centre, we're looking at how we incorporate those into the scheme. So it just shouldn't really be an issue. We're trying to deliver a place that is inclusive and that works for that local community. So no, I don't see that as being a problem here. And I don't know, Sandra, hopefully we'll do more with you to work on that.
Yeah. Displacement. Is that what the question is about, displacement?
Yep.
Okay, I mean, I think Canada, you're obviously looking at this within the context of the borough as a whole, aren't you? I mean, it's not just Canada Water, so you don't want to, in my mind, I'm thinking you sort out the crime in Canada Water, but it gets sent to other parts of the borough, and that having that sort of borough-wide perspective about how, the role that Canada Water plays as a town centre amongst all the other town centres in the borough, I think could be the thing that makes you think about displacement and where, the things that you don't want might turn up because you've sort of tidied up one part of the borough. So I think it's about having a borough-wide perspective about crime and health and
well, okay,
that kind of thing.
I think that's really important. Hopefully we are doing that stuff, but it's through dialogue with the community, people like yourself, that we'll be able to continue to get better at that.
Well, unless anybody else has any dying questions, I think we're going to call it to a close. Let you all get to the lunch queue first, because I'm told lunch comes next, which you'll all be very pleased about. Thank you very much for listening and taking part. Cheers all.